Now, before we add all the other list items, I'll save this and make sure that we can actually see this. And of course, to see this, we have to make sure that this filters screen actually gets loaded. For that, we can go to tabs Dart, and here in set screen, if the identifier is set to filters, I do want to go to this filters screen. Now, of course, we can do this as we did it in the past by using navigator of context and then push a new material page route, which has this builder function where we get the context and then return the screen widget that should be loaded. In this case, the filters screen widget, which at the moment can be set to a const value. Now, of course, as you know, in order to use filters screen here, you also must make sure that you're importing filter start into this tab start file. With that done, you can load it like this. And if we would add this code and save everything and restart, you will see that now if you tap filters, indeed you're taken to the filters screen. Now here on this filters screen, we then have this list item. And here we can toggle this setting as expected. And we do have this back button. And if we press this, we're taken back. But of course, here the drawer is still open, which is rather strange. Now, of course, it is still open because we never closed it. We just navigated to a different screen. Now, what we can do is we can go to the tabs screen. And before we navigate to the filters screen, we can call this code here to close our drawer. So to pop the drawer before we then navigate away. And now, since we actually have the same kind of code in both branches, we can simplify this code and always execute it outside of the if statement right at the start of set screen. Since we always want to close that drawer, that never changes. It does not depend on this condition. And we can therefore also get rid of this else branch here so that we always close the drawer, but if the identifier is filters, we then also navigate to a different screen. With that logic added, if you open the drawer and go to filters, you reach that screen, but if you go back, you see the drawer is not open. And that is a pretty nice behavior, I'd say. Now, you could also want an alternative behavior where you also have a drawer inside of your filters screen. For that, in filters Dart, we could go to scaffold and of course also add our main drawer here. We then also, of course, need to add a set screen method to this class here and pass it to main drawer so that we can react to an item being tapped. So we have to set this onSelectScreen method here where we accept this identifier, and we can do this with an anonymous function as I'm doing it here, or add a method to this class. Here I'll just go with an anonymous function, and then here we could basically do the same as before. Always call navigator of context pop, but if the identifier is equal to meals in this case, since we're on the filters screen, we want to go back to the tabs screen. And this could be achieved by using navigator of context, push material page route, and here we get the context, and I want to go to the tabs screen like this. Now, of course, as you know, for this to work, you also must make sure that you added the appropriate import for tabs screen so that you are importing tab start. And if you do that, you will see that now, if you go to this filter screen, the back button is gone and it was indeed replaced by the drawer button here. And here you can then go to meals, for example. So that's now simply a different way of navigating around. Now what you'll notice though is that if you use the physical back button on your device, which on the simulator here, on the Android emulator, can be emulated here with help of that toolbar on the right, you indeed can go back through all these navigation actions that you performed. Because of course you did still push these screens on this stack of screens, you just don't have this back button here in your app because you're setting a drawer. And hence this drawer icon and this drawer button is used instead of the back button. But technically there still is this stack of screens going on. And that might be the behavior you want, being able to go back with help of the back button, but you also might want to replace the current screen with the new screen if you're using the drawer. So that if you are on the tabs screen and you go to the filters screen, you actually don't push this screen onto the stack of screens, but instead you replace the currently active screen with the filters screen so that the back button would not work and would not take you back. And since this is also a pattern you should know, I'm also going to show you how this could be implemented, because it's really straightforward to do. You just replace push, for example here in the tabs screen file, with push replacement. And the rest stays as it is. But this will now make sure that filters screen is not pushed as a new screen onto the stack of screens, but that instead the currently active screen, in this case tabs screen, will be replaced with the filters screen. And therefore the back button wouldn't work because there is nowhere to go back to. And you can do the same in the filters screen. There, when you navigate to the tabs screen, you could use push replacement instead of push. If you make those changes and you restart your app, you will see that the drawer still works as before, but if I go to the filters screen and I then press the back button, I actually closed the app because there was no screen to go back to, and then the default behavior indeed is to close the app. So that's simply an alternative navigation pattern which you should also be aware of, which is why I'm showing it to you. Now here I actually don't want to use that pattern though. Indeed, I don't even want to have this drawer button on my filters screen, though you could absolutely use it, but here I don't want to have it. I'll comment it out so that you still see how that code could look like. But I'll comment it out because I'm happy with having a back button on the filters screen to go back to the tabs screen. But of course, this also means not only that these imports aren't needed anymore, but that we also have to make sure that the back button on the filters screen can actually work by ensuring that we don't use push replacement here on the tabs screen, but just push, so that we do push the filters screen on top of this stack of screens, so that there we will get this back button, which then will actually work. And with all of that, if we save this, we should have the same behavior as before, where we can go to filters, change something, go back, and this all works. Of course, right now our filter state isn't saved and we only have one item here on the filters screen, but these are the things we're now going to work on next.